First and foremost, the topic of privacy is one that is especially dear to me. I had an opportunity to write a book on kind of building out privacy programs, and I love Relyance's tagline, privacy, it's in the code. So I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by a true thought leader in this space. Leila, I'm really, really excited to hear your insights. And it's not just because of what you're doing at Relyance, but as well as kind of your background from the law and thinking about the intersections of law and technology. So without any further ado, I'm just thrilled to be here, and I will steward questions in the chat. So welcome, Leila.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's wonderful to be here. Really grateful for the opportunity and excited to dive in, especially with a fellow aficionado and privacy, a passionate privacy professional, as we say. So looking forward to diving in. As I mentioned in the chat, unfortunately, I cannot see your faces or questions in the chat. So Matt, thank you for letting me know if anyone has a confused look on their faces, needs more information about Relyance or questions, just feel free to jump right in. When I'm in full screen, I can only see my slides. So I believe that everyone can see the slides. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, Matt.
That's correct. It's rendered.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you again for this wonderful opportunity to share more about what we do here at Relyance AI. Thanks, Matt, for highlighting our mission statement, where in addition to saying, privacy, it's in the code, because it is, our mission is to really match the speed of privacy, data governance, and compliance operations to the speed of development and business operations. Largely because for too long, we've had privacy as an afterthought. Privacy is addressed after the speed of business, after the development of software, after pushing code into production. Now, for the first time, we can finally act alongside our engineers as privacy professionals, make sure that we have an understanding of data and information flowing, and just get ahead of any kind of privacy risks that may be happening. So really excited to dive in. I just want to share a little bit about my story, because it's very much relevant to why Relyance was actually created. I've been working in data protection as a lawyer and data protection officer for the last 15 years, largely building out privacy and data governance programs for companies of all different sizes. I had a private practice where I was supporting small and medium enterprise companies. And then I really wanted to get into the big leagues and see how large publicly traded companies manage their privacy and data governance programs. But what I saw is that even with the largest of companies, what we ended up seeing was it was very, very difficult to understand three things. What data did we have? Who was accessing that data? And what was done to that data? Now, no matter what kinds of programs that there were, or what kind of existing technology was out there, I could only find two types of software that tried to help in this space, and neither of them met my needs. One of the types of software that I found was largely the automation of sending forms and surveys between the privacy and legal teams and the engineering and business teams. That never made sense to me. We cannot solve privacy by filling out forms through data entry and through doing surveys. I saw a second type of solution, which was still sort of missing the mark, and it was largely focused on database scanning. That too was not exactly privacy by design. First of all, it was happening at a moment in time, and it was only based on data already collected. So we were not getting ahead of data processing in any way. It was just data was already collected. Here's what we've already done. This is also not really privacy by design. And so I've partnered with a machine learning expert, my co-founder, Abi, who has built compilers for much of his career, where when you're building a compiler in the area of technology, what you're doing is helping code as it's built come together and perform. This is a type of technology that's used for performance monitoring. It's even used for security. And we've never had anything like this actually used for data privacy. So we're very excited to be backed by both Unusual and Menlo Ventures with wonderful advisors, including Jyoti Bansal, They call sort of the Elon Musk of the SaaS space because he runs many different companies at once, and he's just a brilliant thought leader, as well as Phil Lee, a leading data protection expert and lawyer. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the problems that I highlighted and what the use of sort of the previous generation of privacy technology looked like. Now, as many of you probably know, we are really at the beginnings of this historic shift in global data protection, where for the very first time, beginning with the GDPR, we had this domino effect, really a tipping point, where there are now 29 states in the United States alone that have either recently adopted or are considering adopting privacy legislation. And the way that we've been handling this is having someone like myself, a data protection officer or a privacy or security professional, chasing down other units in the organization. Now, if you're at a technology company, this can be particularly difficult because the engineer's job within a SaaS organization or any technology organization is to push code and build product as quickly as possible. So to stop what engineers are doing to understand where personal data lives, largely by sitting in meetings with engineers or filling out forms, is just a very, very broken, it's a very outdated way of doing things, and it leads to a whole host of issues across an organization. So everything from friction between teams, because no one really likes to get grilled by a lawyer about how they're processing data. You can also get requests from customers, regulators, or the public around data processing. What are you doing with information? And you don't want to be a deer in headlights when you get those questions. You want to be prepared. You want to have a full understanding at all times, in real time, what's happening with information. And with the sort of previous way of doing things, what we've had is, okay, I know based on the meeting I attended and what an engineer told me about data processing. And that's what I entered in using manual data entry into a form. And this is how I know about data processing. As you can see, it's a really, really broken process. In the M&A space, as well as generally in the software sales space, I've seen personally deals completely fall through. And just the lack of understanding of data processing leads to an increase in deal to close time by anywhere between 27 and 35%. So if I haven't sold you on the importance of actually working on privacy, getting an understanding of where your data lives, just from a general legal perspective, from a compliance perspective, it is also very much touching our business now because it is negotiating every commercial transaction, and you want your deals to be closing up to 35% faster by having observability. And then, of course, as lawyers get involved with understanding where data lives, what can often happen is this slows down our product launches. So when engineers are trying to build code, build features, release new products, and they are stopped during that release process in order to basically answer questions manually about data processing, this can also cause a host of issues as well. So our approach here at Relyance AI is that we really need to focus on where the source of truth is without disrupting engineering workflows, because sort of stopping the speed of innovation, the speed of software development is the wrong way of doing things. And until now, how we've been approaching things is, okay, there's this new law. Now, let me take the law and impose it downstream onto a very large organization. They might have global operations. You might have hundreds of people located across the world. And it just doesn't work. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, it's probably one of the most painful things that a lawyer has to go through, or anyone that's trying to get into compliance with these privacy laws, is let me get an understanding of data flows across this entire group of companies. It just doesn't make sense. So what Relyance is really focused on is actually going to the source of truth, the code, the machine learning pipelines, your infrastructure, your APIs, processes, and tools, where 90% of your information actually lives to privacy questions. Let's ask questions to code and then reverse engineer the information that we need to build a privacy program without disrupting the speed of business and engineering development. Now, how do we do this? Really in 4 ways. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the Relyance Intelligence Engine. Now, I'm going to go through these 4 integrations, all of which are addressing the problems we've talked about. And what I want to highlight is that typically when you talk to SaaS organizations, you talk about the implementation time. It might take months and months when you're talking about a large-scale SaaS implementation to build a global privacy program. What is brilliant about the way Relyance operates is that we only take 4 to 5 hours to implement our technology and build your global privacy program. So our first integration is with respect to infrastructure. So every SaaS organization has some kind of infrastructure tooling. Relyance effectively integrates with your infrastructure tooling. It takes just about 4 minutes to do this. And what we get is an outline of, if you were kind of thinking of your privacy program as a book, this would be an outline of the chapters of that book. The second integration, code. And, Matt, I'm so glad you like our tagline, because this is where our core IP exists. We say privacy, it's in the code, because it is. For me, it never made sense why, when engineers were actually programmatically defining how data would be processed in code, that there was no translation layer between what was happening on the legal side and what was happening on the engineering side. So through Relyance's innovative approach and technology, what we do is take a single line of code, we drop that code into your CI/CD pipeline. So this is actually just built upon the code compiling. We scan your underlying source code, where, again, engineers have answers to questions about data processing in code. And then from there, we build an automatic and always live data inventory and map. And when I say always live, every time your engineers are pushing new builds, we're able to update your data map and inventory in real time. This is a very, very exciting technology. We have been the first in the industry to offer this from a privacy perspective. So thrilled to be able to share this with you all today. So that's our code integration. Then we have a third integration, which relies on API connectors. So this allows us to understand what your vendors are doing, what metadata are they processing. And this helps us to build an understanding of your data map and inventory as it relates to what third-party vendors are processing information. Now, with these first 3 integrations, what this does is give us an understanding of your operational reality. In real time, exactly what data are you processing? And it's actually answering questions that we've previously done through manual data entry. Lawyer has interview with engineer. Engineer says, this is what we're doing with data. Lawyer uses manual data entry into form, and that's what's being done. This is why we have security breaches. This is why we get surprised with privacy and security incidents. Now, for the first time, what we have is actually this ability to understand in real time, with respect to real-time data processing, exactly what is going on in your systems and with third-party vendors. Now, the third-party vendor piece is very important, because 70% of security incidents happen with third-party vendors. So we're getting visibility into that. Now, with these first 3 integrations, that gives us sort of one side of the coin. Now, there's a fourth side of the coin here, which is the contracts and policies piece. And when I was looking at software tools back in 2018, as the GDPR was approaching, if you said you did privacy tech back in 2018, I was so desperate to get help that I demonstrated your platform and your product right away. And so what we have here with the contracts and policies piece, that is something that none of the other third-party vendors have. What I found was, even with the manual ways of doing things, we got some understanding of the data map and inventory. And it's one of an organization's most valuable assets, and yet we just let it sit there. We don't compare it against what the requirements are. We don't look for gaps or risks, compliance issues, or anything else. We just check a box and say, we did our data map. That's not useful, right? And as a matter of practice, the next thing you do when you've done your data map and inventory is you want to see where the gaps are. So what's awesome about our fourth integration is that we compare what the requirements are, whether it's in law or in your internal policies or in your contracts, against what's actually happening in reality. So if there's ever a disconnect, we're able to highlight that for you through our intelligent insights. Now, that's just one of the really great things that we do from just a gap analysis standpoint. There is a second core benefit of having the contracts and policies as an integration here, which is we're able to automatically generate for you records of processing activity. So a record of processing activity is effectively a record which is maintained and stored about data processing, so that we can understand at all times exactly how information is being processed. And I'll show you how that works in just a minute here. And so, I'll get back to this in just a minute, but because of our quick implementation time, our real-time automation of the data inventory and map, our contract integrations, and these wonderful and useful intelligent insights, what this has enabled us to do is secure customers as large as Zoom, Coinbase, Fivetrend, New Relic, and others, in order to help them really maintain observability in their privacy and data governance programs. So I'm going to jump into a live demo. I don't know, Matt, have there been any questions in the chat? Anything that I can help to address or add? Anything that I can share before we get into a live demonstration here?
I think we're good to go on the demonstration, but what I love is kind of this grand unifying theory. It's almost like the string theory for privacy in bringing together those disparate stakeholders. As somebody that's had kind of the knuckles proverbially bloodied, trying to deal some of these activities. I love this approach. I'm ear to ear grinning.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yes, wonderful. And yes, that's what we found with a lot of our prospective customers is just really hitting on that Achilles heel of pain of, you cannot build a privacy program unless you understand the data you have, who's accessing the data, what's done to it. Now, for the first time, we're giving that level of observability into the privacy program. Wonderful. Well, I would love to get into a live demonstration. I quickly peeked over now that I'm out of full screen. It doesn't look like we have any questions so far, but I'm certainly happy to address and answer any questions that may come up as we're going through the demo. So in the interest of time, I know that we just have until quarter after here. What I'm going to do is just quickly talk about some of the integrations we do. I've already sort of walked us through what those top integrations are. This is literally the implementation time. You do quick connections here. You can see that you can just drop in a quick API key or token by editing the JSON file here. Takes about 4 minutes and then you're done. Our second integration is with source code. With a single line of code, you can embed this into your build pipeline, and this is automatically updating your privacy program at every point without disrupting any engineering workflows. We also have a contract integration, again, takes just a couple of minutes where we ingest your existing contracts. And then finally, our vendor integrations, where we connect to individual API calls with these third-party vendors. So what does that get you? Once you've done all 4 of the connections, you can come back and you'll see here that we've started to populate these interesting insights by vendor and by type. I'll come back to that in just a moment. But notably, what we are able to do is really build out that data inventory and data map in real time. So I'd like to share with you exactly what this looks like. What we've done through about, like I said, 4 to 5 hours of integrations is identify which third-party vendors your organization is sending information to. And so what this does is really maintain and ensure that you have that real-time picture of exactly what third parties are accessing information. Again, we targeted vendors first, and I'm going to get into internal data processing in a second because of that 70% number of security incidents happening in your supply chain. You want that observability and understanding of exactly what information is being processed by those vendors. Now, if you click on any one of the individual vendors here, what you'll see is that we've also populated. This all used to be done manually in spreadsheets or in forms or in Google Docs or Google Sheets. We've done this for you in real time without you having to do any kind of manual data entry. It is truly game-changing in the way of observability from a privacy perspective. Now, and this is all done through those 4 integrations. You'll see here that when I click on Twilio, I see that these are the personal data types, data subject categories. We even tell you whose data is being processed. Now, this also helps with the data subject request fulfillment, which is a new requirement under California law, where we absolutely have to understand exactly where an individual's information is being processed and be able to fulfill certain requests under the CCPA amended by the CPRA. So now we have the vendor understanding. We know exactly what vendors are processing personal data. You can click around to different vendors and see the other types of personal data. I'd also like to show sort of that internal processing, because it's not just what is happening with your third-party vendors that are getting sort of downstream access to information that your organization is processing, but it's also internally, how is data being processed? So what I'm showing you here is an internal view. So what this is being run on, this demonstration, it is a live demonstration on an organization that processes, it has an e-commerce processing called Boutique. Now, they have an underlying SaaS product, so you can check out, you can purchase things and put things into your cart. You can check out, you obviously there's payment information that's being processed. If you click here, you can quickly see the personal data types that are being used or accessed by any internal microservices, as well as what are the bi-directional data flows. So great, a consumer comes to our site, they go to buy a camera, they put the camera in the cart. What's the information that I'm collecting when they get to the checkout nature of the service? Now, Relyance is going to be able to populate that in real time. And what's awesome about the way our tech works is that we don't actually need to collect the underlying data that the consumer is actually submitting in order to place that order. So very exciting, because it's a much more limited way of protecting, of getting access to the same information we need without touching the data. We're really implementing privacy by design, even at Relyance AI, and how our technology is built. This is also really useful. So for anyone on the call, Matt, I don't know if you were on any incident response teams, but what can often happen is you get this call often on Friday nights, you're just about to sit down for dinner with your family, and then suddenly there was a security breach. It is extremely difficult to understand what the nature of the breach was, what data was processed. And if you have a breach, say with one of your internal systems or some kind of security risk, you really need to understand exactly how that system connects to your external vendors and connects to other internal systems. Now, until now, we really haven't had that level of observability. With Relyance, if there's a security incident or a security breach, you can just really just log into Relyance. You'll understand immediately the information that might have been exposed. And with different data breach and notification requirements across the full United States, this allows you to see right away whether or not there's any kind of breach notification requirement that you need to fulfill based on the nature of data processing. Or if one of your third-party vendors contacts you, let's say that Google or Stripe have a security incident, you can log in and understand what other systems internally might be impacted. So for that reason, we've had not only a lot of privacy professionals and lawyers very interested in Relyance, but also security engineers and other members of the engineering team. So this is one view. We also have a data map grid view that gives a little bit more robust information if you'd like to see this sort of in the form of a spreadsheet, which we have seen in the past when we've had to deal with this manually, where we are automatically and using machine learning, tagging departments, industries, data subject categories, the personal data types, any kind of sensitive or special categories of data. Lots of new requirements under this new California law where we can help to actually track and process whether or not there's any kind of sensitive or special category of data that might be involved in data processing with an organization. So that will all be available for you here. Then we've also applied processing activities. This is really important for anyone doing business in the EU in particular, or even in Brazil. The regulators have different ways of quantifying data processing. Relyance has used machine learning to automatically apply processing activity labels to the nature of processing there. We've identified the processing reason and have helped with other global compliance requirements, like understanding the basis for international data transfers, whether there's a DPA in place. Also really helpful, what security measures a third-party vendor might have in place. So very helpful so that you have the understanding and make sure, because a lot of people don't know this, but it's a requirement for you to flow down the same promises you've made in your contracts with your customers to other third parties. So this is one way in order to assist and ensure that you are meeting those sort of contract flow down requirements and really helping you with compliance. We've also laid out the retention period and other areas that are quite important for an understanding of exactly what a third-party vendor is doing on your behalf. So I know that we're just coming up on time here. I'd like to spend just a couple minutes talking about the universal record of processing activity, where you can see here that we've actually extracted information from your contracts. As I said, we ingest your contracts, and we are comparing that against that operational reality. What is actually happening with data in real time? So what we like to say is that for the first time, lawyers and privacy professionals can speak in code, because we are really telling you down the line of code what data is being processed. And engineers and security professionals can speak in contract in really simple terms, really bringing everyone to fulfill that translation gap that we've had for such a long time, so that everyone is on the same page and we're talking about the same things, because engineers get just as confused about what they can do with data. This also allows companies to do more with data, because we can see for the very first time exactly what the requirements are around data processing in a clear, observable way. Now, I know we just have about 5 minutes left here. I did want to talk about sort of the personal information types. Now, what happens if we detect in reality that something like salary and income data is being processed, but under the contract, that's actually not one of the data types that that particular third-party vendor, or even you as a vendor, can process? Well, that's a data misalignment, and this is precisely where Relyance helps to prevent and detect security and privacy incidents. So what we do, again, down to the line of code, we get an understanding of the data that's being processed. We're able to tell you that pursuant to our evaluation with the Relyance Intelligent Engine, what we found is that according to this line of code, you're processing this data, but it wasn't allowed under your contract. You should take a look at it. This is a ticketing system. It allows you to resolve privacy and security risks within the Relyance platform. You can assign to different members of your team, making sure that this is truly a collaborative effort. Privacy and security are probably two of the most cross-functional areas of any organization. So it's really great to get everyone into the same system and on the same page. You can set due dates and resolve insights in other ways. Now, I don't think we have time with the 3 minutes left to talk about some of the data subject request fulfillment that we now have under California law, certainly under the European GDPR, or General Data Protection Regulation, also a requirement. But we also assist through the white labeling of an external facing portal where data subjects can come in and submit a data subject request, and that request can get managed by your organization within the Relyance platform, as well as data protection assessments. So if you are running, for example, if you're building a new product, releasing a new feature, and it involves personal information processing, you really want to make sure that you have an assessment done to evaluate whether or not there's any risk involved, and that you have the right security controls in place. What's different about Relyance is that rather than getting an empty form based on manual data entry, we are populating up to 80% of your data protection assessments for you by suggesting through machine learning intelligence how you should be protecting people's information based on the data subject type and the type of information that's generally processed. So with 2 minutes left, I will go ahead and pause there to see if there might be any questions. We can also be reached at info@relyance.ai, or you can go to our website, relyance.ai.
I just want to thank you. I think this is effectively a privacy program in a box. You have within the application the ability to address some of the most fundamental challenges that any of us that have had to deal with building out privacy programs are up against. And the third-party vendor insights, I think, are second to none, especially when you think of business associate agreements. I had no idea we were sharing protected health information with this particular entity. That could be an Office of Civil Rights violation. The OCR, you don't want them knocking on your door. And just the insights as a security practitioner or somebody that is passionate about privacy and privacy program developments, you've really addressed in this platform all the really difficult challenges and has simplified it for organizations. I absolutely love this. Absolutely love it.
I'm so glad to hear. Absolutely. And, certainly happy to share anything further about the platform. But thank you so much for having us, Matt. It's such a delight to be here. It's been wonderful collaborating with the whole team. And, we are so excited to have the opportunity to showcase what we're building.
And as my friend and colleague, Teresa notes, you will be in the panel coming up a little bit later today. So thank you again for an absolutely outstanding discussion today. This was a great overview.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the panel this afternoon. And yes, we'll see you a little bit later in the afternoon.
Take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.